Hello and welcome. My name is Philip Ramos, and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us here on our Spotlight series. Joining us here today is Walter Watts, Presidential Diamond, transformational coach, focusing on healing, health, and emotions. Super excited to have him join us today and share his story, his perspective, his journey, where he's at today, where he started, and what that process looked like. Super fun to be doing these interviews for us to get to know people, get to know what it looks like for other people to participating, whether as entrepreneurs, whether in the business of health, whether in the business of network marketing, all these different things that we start to approach. How do we bring the best version of ourselves, and what does it look like for us to thrive in success? So Walter, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and kick it off. So some people know who you are, some people don't, right? They're going to watch this and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's Walter," right? But for those that don't know, give us a little bit of background. I mean, we talked about, multiple hats before we even started this interview. Tell us a little about some of those hats. What are some of the roles you currently have in your life? What do you have going on? And how do all those different roles or those hats that you wear, how do they shape your life and what you do today?
Yeah, for sure. Man, my wife and I live in the Boise, Idaho area. My wife, Melody, and she's got two kids. I have three. We have a blended family. Her youngest is 16. My youngest is 17. So we got some young
Perfect.
adult kids and some teenagers. We're really loving this space right now with our kids. We loved all the spaces, but this has just been a lot of fun seeing them grow into adulthood and helping them develop into outstanding young men and women. Um, so right now, Melody does doTERRA full time. She's a doTERRA Presidential Diamond. She's a phenomenal leader, mentor, knows the oils really well. She was a diamond when we got married 11 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So I came into the business. We were dating. I mean, she grew real fast. So when
Sure.
we were dating, she was a silver, and then 9 months later, she was a diamond. And then within a couple of months of getting married, um, she was a blue diamond. And so she had, I think, blue diamond in 17 months.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, she's a rock star. And so I've had to kind of through this process find my own way in where I fit in with doTERRA.
Sure.
And before my days in doTERRA, my background's tax and accounting and financial planning. Spent years in that and did a couple of years in technology sales as well.
Okay.
So I have a sales background. I have some business consulting and planning experience, and so bringing that into our business, being able to run kind of the financial side of our business, that was the value I brought at first to our
Mm.
business until I got to know the oils. And it was actually during our dating period where I had some pretty profound experiences with essential oils. I had been dealing with a lot of anxiety and trauma from my from from previous, and I had some pretty high walls. And so one night she had slathered some Serenity on my chest. She says, you just need to relax a little bit. So she slathered some Serenity on my chest, and out came my personality. And she says, "Oh, there we are." And so between that and a few other experiences with oils, I became a believer in the oils and how
Mm.
effective it can be for helping people on a physical level and on an emotional level. I've
Yeah.
experienced both personally. And in that process, I went and learned emotion code and body code, a couple of different
Okay.
energetic modalities that help people remove blocks so that their bodies can heal innately.
Mm.
And um, and in that process of learning that, I took it to a level of doing it as a business, helping other people heal on a physical and emotional level. And the oils and the nutrition doTERRA has fit beautifully in that. And so when I'm working with somebody, they're always going to get a protocol from me on what oils they need and what nutrition they need. So it's just a very symbiotic relationship with what I do with people, and um, I'm using doTERRA. So yeah.
That's awesome. Now, and I mean, I know I'm fascinated by this, and I'm sure anybody watching this. You said, your background, accounting and sales, and
Hmm.
now we take a leap forward, into, emotions and nutrition, and all these different things that you do and these different modalities that you do. And I think it's fascinating. I think for myself, coming from the same thing where I was and doing the things that I do now to work on my emotions or work on my health. What did what motivated that process? What was the driving force from you going to where you were, the career you created, right? The time you probably spent in school, all the different things you did, to develop your expertise in these areas. And then you jumped into, this other world, right? With oils, emotions, nutrition, all these other things. And maybe some of those things were there, but now, as a transformation coach, that's what you spend, your days doing. What was the driving force behind that decision? And because of
Yeah.
that, you probably had some highs and lows. What has kept you going, throughout this entire time, throughout that process?
Yeah, for sure. A couple of things. One is when my wife and I got married, um, I had PTSD, I had complex PTSD, and I had really bad anxiety.
Mm,
And so it was to go and heal myself from that.
wow.
And so learning to use nutrition to help repair my body, my cells, my
Yeah.
brain, the
Yeah.
essential oils that help support me emotionally was really big. The other thing too was chronic fatigue
Mm,
I dealt with, which I think a big part of that was the PTSD.
for
Uh,
sure.
the second thing was my wife Melody had chronic Lyme disease,
Okay.
and she had other autoimmune conditions and other health issues, and it was really to help use those things to help her, our family, our kids have been through a lot, been through divorces, and we used a lot of these tools doTERRA has to
Mm.
help support our families' emotional and physical health.
Wow. So your journey was created from, I guess, what you experienced in your past or maybe some of your struggles. And then so really leaning into some of these new ideas and new concepts, found a passion to kind of do what you're doing today.
Yeah, for sure.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think sometimes, we don't often I love that about, and whether if it's business or specifically, in network marketing industry, I've always found, when people have the most, I would say, I don't want to say necessarily compelling story, but they found something that really solved a huge issue they were facing in their life. And that's what drove them to do the things you do. Because, what we talked about, previously to our interview, you mentioned some of the other things you do and how you work with clients and the things you take them through. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. That's amazing. But I'm sure going back to what you just shared about, whether if it's from experiences with, you had with your kids, PTSD, all these different things, or with your wife, anxiety, all these different things, I can see how, why you do what you do, right? Why you spend the time doing what you do, because you found so much healing and that sort of thing in your own life from it.
Yeah, and to your point, I think people that are successful, it's because their mess becomes their message, right?
Yes.
Become vulnerable with people and are able to share that vulnerability, and it just opens up doors for them with people.
Yeah, no, that's so true. So speaking about, network marketing, for anyone that, whether they're jumping into this industry or even business, entrepreneurship in general, I
Hmm.
think that so many people like the idea of it, right? Or like the idea of what network marketing can offer, or residual income, time freedom. But we often, don't always know what we're stepping into, right? What we're getting into type of thing. So what do you feel like are some of the most important expectations or even mindsets for people to start to adapt to, as they jump into these things? How do they prepare themselves? What's some of the best advice that you've probably seen with your wife, but even with yourself, of doing the things that you do, what are some of good expectations and good mindsets that we got to come prepared with?
That's a great question. I think number one, you have to be a product of the product,
Mm,
right? You have to be a believer in the product and know that it works. So getting to really know the products and how effective they can be for yourself. So you can speak easily and freely about the products because you know them inside out.
yeah.
So being a product of the product. I think number two, the biggest thing is, as Justin Harrison says, you can do this business, sometimes, right? You know, that whole concept he talks about. It's
Yep. 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 Yep.
You can do it part-time, you can do it full-time, you just can't do it sometimes. And
Yes.
if
Yes.
you do it sometimes, then what I've seen is it's hard to build any kind of momentum in the
True.
business. So consistency at whatever pace you want it to be is really key for success in network marketing or in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
If you put all this effort into it and grow and push it real fast, and then you quit for a while, and then you start up and try it again, it's like pushing a big rock up a hill. It just rolls back and runs you over, and you can't get anywhere, right?
Yeah. 100%.
So it's that consistency that I see. It's so vitally important.
Yes. One thing that I've being in whether it's industry or entrepreneurship, one thing I think that people make the mistake of they identify something they enjoy, and they're like, "Ooh, I want to start this business," but then they treat that, it's hobby. They treat it like a hobby, so they give it hobby effort, right?
Yeah,
And but they want business results. They want business success. They want professional results, professional success, and I think that that's one thing that I've noticed that to your point is that this sometimes idea either you're going to do it, you're not going to do it, make a decision. But I think that that's one of the biggest things that I think that can hinder us is when we don't approach it with that. I wouldn't say necessary. Maybe intensity is the wrong word, but maybe that level of commitment or
mm,
that passion or fulfillment even where they're like, no, this is what I'm going to do because of this. And going back to your story of what you experienced in your life. And so now you get to spend time doing, helping others solve their, struggles, their problems, their anxiety, their things because of, some solutions you found in your own life. And, I think that that's a big thing is for us to be able to identify those things and then really start to approach it in a particular way.
for sure.
So throughout your journey, right, going through, where you started, your process, one thing that as a Gallup strengths, one of the things that we know that the way our strengths influence the way we naturally think, feel, and behave in the way we do anything, right? The way we do anything is the way we do everything. And so as you look in your past, whether in accounting, whether in sales, and now you've transitioned into what you do specifically, as a transformational coach, focusing on nutrition, focusing on emotions. How do you feel like your natural processes or your strengths have influenced your journey along the way, but also have influenced your success?
My top five strengths, there's two I kind of really stick out for me. Number one is my number one strength, which is strategic.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything I do is very strategic, in whether it's in presentation of an idea or whether it's approaching a situation. And it's like, hey, how can we maximize that? Maximizer is also a big one. And then the other strength I seem to really use is relator. So having
Mm-hmm.
that combination of relator and strategic, when you can connect to people, so important, right? If you can't
Yes.
connect with people, it's hard to move the needle in the sales process or in the healing process or in whatever process there is. So yeah, everyone's got a strength in that category that helps them connect with someone, and mine just happens to be relator. But so when I'm looking at doTERRA as a business and I'm presenting something to somebody, hey, I see that you're struggling with this. Would you be open to an idea
Mm.
that might help you?
Yeah.
everyone wants to be open, right? So and then, like, here's something I've found that's been helpful for me and
Yeah.
others.
No, I love that. When I remember when we were first meeting, you also mentioned some key, things about how, in your sales process, you would, kind of stay with them a little bit longer in that process, right?
Oh yeah.
Your follow through. I remember when we first chatted, you told me about how long sometimes, some of your appointments, you could be spending 6 hours, with a client. I was like, wow, that's wild. But I think that goes back to who you are at your core, at your nature is, and you're not doing it just for the sake of the result of the sale or the result of the client. But I think that's a wonderful example of your desire to really go deep with that person, right? What you just talked about, vulnerability, is create those moments.
Yeah, I'd love to give you an example of what
Please
that looks
do.
like. It's
Yeah.
like when I was in technology sales, um, most salesmen they make the sale and they kind of turn it over,
Yes.
let it get implemented. I was part of that implementation process. I want to make sure that the equipment got there when we said it was going to be there, and that the process of implementation, that technology happened smoothly. And then afterwards, that we did follow up on the training on how to use the equipment.
Hmm.
And so or most of the other sales guys, they just let somebody else handle that. Oftentimes it didn't get done properly.
Right.
And I just that whole cycle. So I apply that too with doTERRA. I was like, hey, here's a couple of oils I think will work well with that. I'm going to follow up with you in a couple of days. Let's see how it's going. If we need to maybe adjust something, we can adjust something, right? It's just that ability to make sure that you follow up and make sure something works. And if not, let's make a change. Let's adapt. And so I think that's important of being able to stick through that sales cycle of instead of just say, hey, try this out and don't ever show up again. And then pretty soon somebody else shows up to sell them doTERRA and they sign up with that other person, right? So
Right, right,
it's
right. Or
that
they sell them a
follow-up.
different product, right? Because they were there to connect with them and give them the information.
Yeah, or you get frustrated that somebody else signed them up because you just didn't follow up with them.
Right.
So those key touches when I was in financial sales, being able to follow up with prospects multiple times. Hey, just want to touch base with you. Anything's changed? Here's an idea I think you guys might like. And people would just say, hey, you're pleasantly persistent. Hey, I want to do business with you because
Yeah.
you just kept at it, right? So in that sales cycle, it's a multiple touches. It's not just one touch. On the transformational coaching side, I coach people from entrepreneurs to um, CEOs to medical doctors, and we're diving into what's keeping them stuck, what their frustrations are, where they're at, and then we go back and really look at where did their initial responses occur,
Hmm.
or were programmed for them, and we go back and kind of rewire that whole process in the brain and help them create a new process for them to deal with certain problems and create new solutions
Hmm.
for that. Sometimes, yeah, it will be 5 or 6 hours that I work with somebody through a whole process.
Wow, that's amazing.
Sometimes I'll have my wife and I will do couples coaching, and we'll have couples fly in from out of town and stay with us for the weekend, and we go
Hmm.
through that whole process of parenting and relationships and all that stuff. And it's yeah, it's really putting the time and investing in people where they feel important, they feel heard and understood, and then you're providing solutions that they're completely open into because you've taken the time to open those doors, build that rapport, and create trust.
Yeah. And everything you just described, right, of what you did, that's a very strategic process, right?
Oh yeah.
A very strategic sales process, a very strategic follow-up, customer relations, process. And what's so cool about, as you share that, I think sometimes we're just sales in general. What you said at the beginning was, they're so often motivated by the result of the sale, and the moment they get that hit of dopamine, for example, they're off to searching for their next hit, right, their next sale, their next thing. And what's so cool is in an environment where, although you were, obviously committed to the result, in the sale, but committed to that process, that strategic relationship connection. And so I think what you're sharing is just a wonderful example of how, people can succeed and bring the best versions of themselves in the same industry, two different approaches or two different ways, and still find a great amount of success. And I think that's super cool to listen how you describe that, which might be, again, counterintuitive from a sales perspective, right? Or counterintuitive to that
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah, and through that whole process too, I'm planting seeds, right?
Yes.
So, if you can see yourself doing this, let me
Yes.
know, right?
Yeah.
If you're interested in sharing these with other people when you find that these work for you, let me know so I can teach you how to share these with other people.
I love that. I love that. So, with that in mind, reflecting back on, right, again, your journey, where you've come from, this whole thing, and then again, where you're at now, what do you think maybe a key pivotal moment besides, of course, your wife putting Serenity on your chest, waking you up. But what do you think maybe the key moment where you were looking at where you were at, sales, accounting, all these different things? What was that moment where you felt like, man, I want to make a transition into this, or I want to, and how maybe how did your strategy or your relator, who you are come into play to help you make that, make that switch, being able to pivot. Because I think so many people get stuck with what, I've done this for X amount of years. This is what I studied. This is what my career is, what I got my degree in. So they feel like this is what they got to do for the next 20 years, right? But for someone like yourself, you pivoted out of that. And so what was it that motivated that drove that? What was the moment that you're like, man, I can see all the things that I've done, whether using your relator, your strategic, those processes where you're like, I can pivot into this. What was that moment? What did that look like?
I think there are two examples. One going from accounting and tax work to becoming a financial advisor, which is sales, right?
Right, right, right.
Going from a numbers guy, very analytical, to sales. And usually the combination doesn't work very well because people that are analytical have a hard time with sales per
Sure,
se.
sure.
Um, but I had a hard time sitting at a desk 8 to 12 hours a day, especially during, tax season. Those are 12, 13, 14-hour days. And
Yeah.
um, I wanted interaction with people.
Mm-hmm,
And so I made that pivot to do something that was out of my comfort zone
mm-hmm,
with the belief that if I take care of people and do a good job for them,
mm-hmm.
um, the business can keep coming in.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I had to be really gifted at sales and be a really good talker. It was, hey, being able to listen to people and help them find solutions to
Mm-hmm,
help them achieve their goals.
mm-hmm,
And so that was a big one, getting into sales. The second thing I'd say with doTERRA and transitioning into that along with the coaching that I do, it was kind of the self-healing process of, wow, what did I just experience for myself? And I have to help other people because this can be transformational for people, for their health, for their lives, for their families. And um, I I just had to share that with people. And
awesome.
um, I guess once you have that part of healing yourself, and it feels so good, you want others to have it too.
Mm. Well, and I can see, as you go back to, again, the way you did things with, your clients or your customers that you probably had, and taking them through not just, selling them a unit or selling them whatever you were selling them and then leaving them, but taking them through that whole process. Kind of what you're talking about now is you experience something and you're not just out there just trying to, drop an oil on someone's, front porch and, book it. No, you want to drop it off, you want to talk to them, you want to take them through, you want to share with them, and then offer maybe some other things that can, but really take them on that journey. And so it's so cool to see, again, how you thrived in the previous environments, but how you brought the best version of yourself to obviously thrive in an environment that has a massive need, right? A massive need for people to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Not just physically. I think we get stuck sometimes in the physical idea of health, but you know, doing a lot of this, working with Gallup and doing a lot of things that we do to identify retention and engagement. More people struggle with retention and engagement in anything that they do, not because they don't have the energy to do it physically, but it's because of the mental capacity. It's the emotional capacity, right? That keeps them, that it hinders them. It's that thing that's handicapping them and holding them back. And so, you leaning so, I guess, aggressively, or just I would say aggressively, but just passionately to take people on that journey, I think is incredibly powerful. That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. There's one other thing too I like to do is, and being strategic, is
Mm-hmm.
working with people that have centers of influence, right?
Oh,
So whether it's a chiropractor, functional medicine doctor, a health
sure.
coach, someone that already sees a lot of patients that can implement it nice, very seamlessly into their business.
Yeah.
And so that's been one of our niches, Melody and mine, in working with that. So my goal is when I'm working with someone like that, to give them a really good experience, to
Mm,
get results for them because of the potential uh, of finding a business partner through them
for sure.
or finding someone that's going to refer business to me
Yeah.
on a regular basis. And so even I even did that in the financial services business where I worked with CPAs, and because of my tax planning background, I'm able to look at tax returns for in investment management in a different realm than the average sales guy in the financial services business, right? So
Yeah.
I'd build rapport with CPAs who would, send me business because they respected me, they understood I understood their job. I would take really good care of their clients, right? So that even floats back into doTERRA, being able to take care of somebody really well that has that influence and ability to send you business.
Yeah. That's super strategic. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's awesome. So, along your process, obviously, we've talked about how amazing you're strategic, you're relator, all these great things. You can see, your superpowers come into life, and again, how you did it in whether the tax business, how you did it, when you were as a financial advisor, and now you're moved into DoTerra, all the things that you mentioned with your wife, whether you're doing, bringing couples into your house for the weekend, spending time with clients. And we all know, right? Entrepreneurship has its ups and downs. Network marketing has its ups and downs, and we as people have our ups and downs. So what have you felt like in terms of strengths, right? What have been maybe some of the challenges, or maybe some of the blind spots that maybe some of your natural processes or your strengths have maybe hindered, and maybe kind of gotten in the way, and you've had to become aware how to manage some of that or utilize that differently.
Well, that's a good question. I would say at least in our business,
Mm-hmm.
there's ups and downs in our business, right?
Yeah.
And in the economies as well. And so people can get stuck on, hey, doTERRA is struggling or the economy is struggling. Nobody wants to buy oils. Nobody wants to invest in their health. And we can buy into that,
Yeah.
right? And one thing I've learned is you create your own economy.
Right.
So what your belief is, that's going to be your reality. If
Mm-hmm.
you believe it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. If you believe people aren't going to buy from you, they're not going to buy from you. But if you flip that the other way and believe that people, doesn't matter what the economy is, people are going to buy from you because you're going to bring value, then that's the belief and that's your reality. And so I think that's one of the big things here in our business and network marketing is whatever your belief is, your results will follow. And you can always go counter trend. I know
Mm-hmm.
when doTERRA had their dip, we still had teams that were growing exponentially.
Hmm.
And so um, I think really you have to focus on creating your own reality through your beliefs.
Well, I think that that statement right there, really kind of sums up, the concept of, money, wealth is a mindset. I
Mm.
know, I've heard that before, and some people get frustrated by that. But I think what you just talked about is a great example of how true that is. If we look for problems and we look for, well, economy this, or, job this, or relationship this, or my team this, it's easy for us to diminish our mindset, which will diminish our activity, right? It'll diminish how we lead, it'll diminish how we engage. And so in that case, it really is, it is a perspective, it is a mindset, and what you're going to choose to focus on versus get out there, and what you were talking about, create your reality, right? Decide what's going to be true for you.
Yeah, I mean, Amy Fulmer is a perfect example of that in Utah, where people thought, well, there's not going to be more diamonds in Utah or blue
Right.
diamonds. She's like, I'm going to knock it out of the park. And she did, right? It's
Yeah, she
almost
goes, watch out, here I come. Yeah.
you know, check here like a her and Heather Anderson. I mean,
Yeah.
I love their energy and their passion.
Yeah.
And so they created their own reality. It's like,
Yep.
we're going to do it. And they did. So,
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. Again, whether it's network marketing, whether it's entrepreneurship, I think you got to decide what your future, is going to be, and how you're going to pursue it. So I think that's super important. Well, speaking of, again, going your wife, you just mentioned Amy Fulmer, doTERRA, and let's just say network marketing in general, of anything that I've done, I've been in this industry for a while, in the front end, the back end of it. Been a part of some great companies, but I've always known in some of the great, some of the biggest coaches or trainers in network marketing talk about this, that this is predominantly a female-led industry, number one. But I would say even more so in doTERRA, right? That you
mhm.
definitely see more, more women in this space, if you will, right? So for men such as yourself, and what actually the reason why I connected to you is because you and Andy started this group. Andy Goddard started this group for men in doTERRA, right? Men in this space. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? This is amazing. Here these guys are saying, hey, let's come together, man. So for someone that's for a man, that's stepping in and say, okay, I believe in the concept of residual income. I see the idea of network marketing. That's appealing to me. I'm not going anywhere in my current, job. I got no 401k. My savings is depleted. I'm not even sure, my home's kind of paid off, but who knows what happens in the future. So what advice could you give to that guy, that man that's there, and be like, hey, how do I jump into this, number one, and then how do I thrive? How do I take that? What does that first step look like? And then when I do decide to take that step, what are some key things that you found for yourself to start to thrive in this environment as a man?
Wow. That's a big loaded question, right?
It is.
There's a
It is,
lot
but
to
it's a
talk
million dollar
about
question
there.
for me, I'll tell you that.
Man. So, like I said before, becoming a product of the product is first thing. Understanding that this business requires consistency.
Mhm.
So even if you have another full-time job, if you want to do it part-time, just being consistent at it to build that residual income. I think the other thing is really important is really how you onboard people makes a big difference. You look at the teams that have the best retention rate in doTERRA, they're really on board really well.
Mhm.
Uh, Betty Torres is a perfect example of that. She's got one of the highest retention rates in doTERRA, and the way she is very structured in that onboarding process, making sure it's really good, that she really gets them to buy into LRP. So
Mhm.
getting really get those little skill sets of onboarding people properly and getting them on an LRP.
Mhm.
Uh, if you have any hesitancy about getting people on an LRP, you need to do some work, belief work on that to see where your blocks are, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And then learning sales. I
Mhm.
mean, we encourage our team members to use Tiffany Peterson's 5 steps of sales
Yes.
mastery. Really important because it really walks people through that process where you're not feeling like you're selling something.
Mhm.
and most people don't want to feel sold to, number one. And number two, people don't want to that have hesitancy in the business, don't want to feel like a salesperson.
Yes.
So if you're a solutions provider, if you learn that language of sales where you can just walk people through the process of being open to trying things, then um, that just increases the opportunity to, to convert somebody and then get them an LRP.
Yeah.
And then, and then the other thing is really just planting seeds with people about the opportunity of the business, and then being very strategic with the partners you can look for, people that you market to,
Right.
uh, and developing maybe a niche
Mm.
that you're
Mm.
comfortable and very conversant in. Like with Melody, reason why she grew so fast in doTERRA was because she had worked for a couple of chiropractors. She knew how, she ran their offices. She knew the flow. She knew the language. She knew what was important to that chiropractor. And so that was one of her niches that she created. Now, she teaches people how to find their own niche, what you're
Right.
comfortable with, but becoming really conversant in the language of your niche and how you want to approach people,
Yeah.
but also being very strategic and finding partners that can either refer business to you or want to run with you in the business.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the I would say the other thing is always having that positive mindset and belief that this is an opportunity,
Hmm.
and our opportunities based on the work we put in, the consistency, and it's about growth.
Hmm.
Right? If I watched Melody each step of the way when she was building her business, she was like, okay, I'm kind of stuck here. What
Hmm.
do I need to learn to get
Right.
to diamond? What do
Yeah.
I need to switch? What do I need to shift? What mindset things? What skills do I need to learn? Okay, she went and did them. And
Yeah.
then she hit diamond, then blue diamond. It's like each one, and it's understanding, okay, a blue diamond, you got to create uh, these create leaders and help them, manage their own teams.
Yeah.
And so be able to identify the skill sets you need to learn and the mindset blocks, um, and continuing to have that belief in the opportunity and setting goals.
Mm.
Goals are so important, right?
Yeah. We got to
Um,
know what we're striving for, right?
gotta know what we're striving for. You gotta, yeah, have that clear vision and picture. I mean, the owners of our company, I mean, they talk about that all the time. And they had a clear vision of what they wanted. They wanted the most pure oils on the planet.
Yeah.
They wanted to do it differently. They wanted
Yeah.
to, and so I'd say someone get into the business and just those little small things to continue to develop yourself as a person, as a salesperson, become a product of the product, and let things happen um, naturally. Don't be afraid to share.
Sure. Sure.
Um, it's not good to have a plate of cookies and just go around walking past people.
Yeah.
Like you want to share it with people.
Yeah.
And so don't be afraid to share, whether it's at the grocery store, with your Uber driver, everyone deserves to have access to doTERRA. So,
Well, and
um,
have access to solutions, right? If your
yeah,
story, I love what you talked about, your experience, your personal experience from where you were and what you did. You were obviously a professional in what you did. You were educated in what you did. And I think sometimes we have this, preconceived notion that, you know, that network marketers or sales, is, it's sleazy, it's grimy, it's not for the professional. But here you are, everything you just described is a very professional strategic framework, for you to show up in a business and create a real, use the network marketing model, to your advantage to build success. And I think that sometimes we just have these ideas that, oh, those people don't want it. But I think you're a beautiful example, wonderful example of, you're not just in it, but you guys are in it, right? You're thriving in it and growing in it.
yeah, we use the products every day. I think one of the biggest things too is keeping it simple.
Mm.
we have so many oils to share, right?
Yeah,
And so I think leading with like the foundational wellness bundle, the kit, which is the core nutrition, which
sure.
creates that consistent LRP,
Yes.
um, consistent purchase every month of a consumable good, and then adding the oils, those top 10 oils to it. Just keeping it simple. You could just do that and be super successful at doTERRA.
Yeah.
Don't need to do anything more than that. I look at Boyd Truman. Is just get oils on people and get them in nutrition. You don't.
So
Yeah,
true.
that one. And so when we do booths from time to time, whether they're little health fair booths or
Hmm.
sometimes we go to some big conferences and do booths. And our goal is really to find out, hey, do you have oftentimes you have headaches, they're tired, they're exhausted, they're
Right.
whatever. So like, hey, can we get some oils on you and get them to experience some oils, some Mino 2 Max, some of the supplements that we have, and then come back and buy after like, wow, I feel energized, I feel great. So really getting people to use the stuff, sample it out. And then it sells itself for sure.
100%. 100%. So as we're wrapping this up, just looking back, what do you think the single most valuable lesson that you have learned, on your journey that, that someone else can, you can basically, help them identify right that pitfall, that I've noticed this. What is the single greatest thing that you've learned, that you can impart on someone else, that they are getting started or these things? I mean, you went through just a couple different bullet points of what to focus on, but what might be that lesson that you feel like you really learned, throughout your process?
Doing income producing activities.
Oh.
Yeah. So sometimes we can get too caught up in watching all the training
Hmm.
and trying to become an expert before, it's like, well, how much of an expert do you have to be to do this business? And I look at some of the most successful people in doTERRA and they just take action.
Yes.
They're just that's the number one, I think, key indicator of success is how much time are you focused on income producing activities versus non-income producing activities?
Right. Right. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that one. With all the trainings available or with all the trainings that you have, I mean, leadership is coming up, right? A lot of
Mm,
people will go to that and, and say that was, although it was growth, it was development, but probably wasn't your, what you might consider to fall in that IPA category. And so we often, we need to separate the difference between growth, development, training, learning, and okay, I sit at my desk or I sit on my phone or, I have that one-on-one or I do that class, identify the difference between those two. So we are focused more on. So when someone says, they don't say, oh, the business didn't work for me. They're not blaming all the, 20 hours a week that they spend in the training process, versus, really diving into what those IPAs are. So I think identifying those is probably pretty critical.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so with someone, so standing on the edge, right? Someone's like, okay, they just watched this. They're like, man, inspired by you. They're like, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I needed to hear. What's one piece of advice besides IPA, right? They got to focus on IPA. Someone to actually to go from the IPA, go from the starting, what is the biggest piece of advice you can give to them to start really thriving and moving that needle forward? And it could be in this business, it could be in their health, it could be in their life, it could be, I mean, because you have so much that you do, so many hats that you wear. We talked about that, before we got started. But what if you can impart on them that one little nugget, what would that be?
I think getting really clear on their vision and mission,
Mm,
right? Why am I doing this? Why do I want to do this? And when you have that why, it's going to drive you, right? When
yeah.
my wife first started, it was that she was a single mother of two with no help really, and she wanted to be able to stay at home,
Yeah.
and then drove her. And then, but each phase, you get to one where that's in the past. So it's continuing to have that why evolve and change because that why can eventually go stale.
Sure.
You've achieved it, whatever you wanted to achieve. And so continuing to tweak and create more vision for you, for your life, and how doTERRA is going to help support that, or your network marketing business is going to help support your why.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Walter, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your value. I appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate your vulnerability. Whether you talked about, your story, your experience, your transition, anxiety, PTSD, some of the things you went through, but where you're at today. And I'll just be as someone, someone that wants to be where you're at, doing what you're at. And I mentioned this when I first, had a chance to talk to you. It's inspiring to think that we can go from, what we might think we're, in doing, to where do we really want to spend. I like what you said there, vision. What do I really want to be doing? What do I really want to spend every waking moment? The moment I wake up, ooh, how do I want to live today? And I think that's a wonderful way to close this, so that, because there are, just going back to the men, there's a lot of men out there that are doing things they probably don't want to be doing in terms of their job, their career, waking up on their, driving to work on Monday morning, only looking forward to Friday, so they can have the weekend off, and giving them a space and a hope where, and again, in a business model like network marketing, where they can create what they want, I think is incredibly empowering. And then maybe to do what you guys do, maybe to do, work with your wife and, create things together. I think that's awesome.
That's fun.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Walter Watts today on our Spotlight series. Thank you again. Please continue to follow us. Please continue to watch, share these interviews. We want to make sure that everybody knows that there's people out there doing the very thing that you want, finding hope, gather some data, get some information, get some tips and tools so you can move forward. Thank you again. Have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Philip.
Thank you.